Nintendo has proven time and again that they are not a company that wants to share any piece of the pie with anyone else if they can help it. Long have any illusions been broken that Nintendo is somehow a happy-go-lucky company that is all about fun and joy. They're actually pretty cutthroat, and with what's been uncovered now, deeply concerning too. And the hope that Nintendo wants here is that if they win by using this new patent and more, they want to not only erase Palworld from existence, but all competitors in one fell swoop. Yep, it's time to do a big update on Pokemon, Palworld, Nintendo in general, really all of it and more. But before we continue, let's first say a big thank you to the sponsor of this video, Fume. Ever feel like you're stuck in a habit you don't even really think about? Maybe it's something you reach for during stressful moments while hanging out with your friends or just out of sheer boredom. I know I've been there. That's why I was excited to try Fume, and honestly, it's kinda been amazing. Fume, the sponsor of today's video, isn't another vape or e-cig or nicotine product. It's actually something different, a simple, satisfying way to replace those bad habits without actually inhaling anything that's harmful for you. There's no vapor, and there's not even any nicotine in this thing either. It's just natural, flavored air that gives you something to reach for without, inhaling chemicals. It's also super easy to set up. As you can see, you just take the flavor out of its packet, you slot it in, you push the cover back on, and then you just slide it open to use or close it when you're done. And I'm not kidding, it's actually that easy that even a dummy like me can do this too. Sometimes breaking a habit isn't just about willpower, it's actually about having something better to reach for instead, and Fume gives you that alternative, and it smells way, way better too. Fume has a magnetic, fidget-friendly design that keeps your hands busy and your mind engaged so you can keep yourself on task more effectively. My personal favorite flavor so far is probably spearmint because it makes everything smell minty, and who doesn't really like that? They also got plenty of other flavors to choose from, as you can see here, and already over 500,000 people have chosen Fume over other alternatives. And again, it's way, way better for you than, smoking that other stuff. And right now, if you order the Journey Pack using my code ENDYMION, you'll get a free Fume topper. So if you've been thinking about changing your habits, this is the perfect first step for all of you guys. So go to tryfume.com/ENDYMION or scan the QR code on screen to grab yours today. Again, that's code ENDYMION, or go to tryfume.com/ENDYMION or scan that code on screen. It helps the channel a lot, it'll make you happy and smell way better, so hey, it's a win-win for everybody involved. As always, thanks to Fume for sponsoring this video, and now let's get on with the show. So let's first begin with this article from Screen Rant to set the stage that's titled, Nintendo's Controversial New Patent Could Change Gaming Forever. I already know that the title of that article sounds like hyperbole or clickbait to you, but sadly it isn't. In case you don't know, Nintendo is suing Pocket Pair over Palworld, not necessarily because it's a game with creatures in it that you can capture, but for other patent infringements according to Nintendo, like Pocket Pair using the concept of capturing creatures specifically with a ball-like item. And the other more nebulous claim that Nintendo apparently owns the right to switching or riding a creature in a video game from ground to air as transport, which is, yes, as stupid as it sounds, because that second one severely impacts many games outside of just Nintendo-made ones and then some. But now, according to Screen Rant and GameSpray, which have been chronicling this whole lawsuit, Nintendo now has a patent that is an ace in the hole, if you will, that will harm even more games. The patent's identity is patent number 1240339. Here's the actual patent on screen for you to see, as GameSpray was able to obtain. Basically, this new patent allows Nintendo to claim the sole rights to the concept of summoning something to aid you in a video game. Here's the exact official description as Nintendo's patent says, as it reads here. An example of an information processing system moves a player character on a field based on a movement operation input. The information processing system causes a sub-character on the field based on a first operation input. When an enemy character is placed at a location where the sub-character is caused to appear, the information processing system controls a battle by a first mode in which the battle proceeds based on an operation input. When the enemy character is not placed at the location, the information processing system starts automatic control of automatically moving the sub-character. The information processing system moves the sub-character based on a second operation input, and when the enemy character is placed at a location of a designation, the information processing system controls a battle by a second mode in which the battle automatically proceeds. That's a lot of words, but pretty much what it means is that Nintendo now officially owns the rights to what a Pokemon turn-based battle looks like, to keep it as simple for all of us to understand. So when you get into a battle in Pokemon, right, you enter it, you throw a Pokeball, a Pokemon comes out, that's the summoning mechanic in action that they're talking about here, and you then issue commands to the Pokemon who then does an attack against the opponent. Yeah, Nintendo owns that now officially, which is terrible because this implicates so many things it's actually ridiculous. And Nintendo was so specific with this particular patent that when you read further into it, it actually gets worse. As Games Phrase shows here, the first step of this patent is that there must be a PC, console, or other computing device, and the game is stored on a drive or similar storage medium. So that means every game imaginable pretty much is affected by this, because all games are stored on via a console through data or storage, or a PC obviously if you play on Steam. So this means that Nintendo just hit all the boxes across every console or computer pretty much in one hit. But they also, as they said in that same part, that Nintendo's patent is validated if the character or summon can move in that specific sequence. Which of course this will cause, in Pokemon's case, your Pokemon physically moves from, the spot to attacking the other Pokemon when it does the command that you issued to it. This then means, for example, that this summoning mechanic that Nintendo now owns implicates any which game that allows you to summon something to help you, that then attacks something else that threatens you in the game. So for example, let's think about that from other games' perspectives for a second here. Monster Hunter Wilds allows you to summon your little Palico buddy to help you. That's something that Nintendo owns now technically. I mean, technically, if you play with your own friends, is that also a summon too in Monster Hunter? Again, it's very nebulous. Another great example is Persona. You summon demons to help you fight, or your own Persona, for example. That too is also a summon that you bring up to help you fight in the game. It also doesn't help that Persona, because you're, in a turn-based game as well, so you're issuing a command to a summon to protect you. But this could also implicate Borderlands 4, since, for example, Vex the Siren and Amon the Forge Knight can both summon either clones in Vex's case, or Forge drones and Amons to protect them. Technically now, under Nintendo's new law, Vex should not be able to summon anything to protect her or issue commands to it, and neither can Amon in Borderlands 4. But it gets more nebulous and concerning too, because to think about it, which other game allows you to summon NPCs that help many players use in video games? That's right. I'm talking about Dark Souls and Elden Ring. They are also implicated by this too, because by you summoning an NPC to help you fight a boss, or say using your Mimic tier in Elden Ring to fight alongside you, you just violated the law and broke Nintendo's copyright rules again, which is, yes, as stupid as it sounds, and I know that it's annoying, but this is essentially what Nintendo has patented here. I'm sure I could think of more game examples, but you guys all get the point. This just cooks the industry in more ways than one due to Nintendo's greed alone. This also does mean that future Souls-like games, or turn-based ones, could also technically be sued for violating Nintendo's patent. So hypothetically speaking, no future Soulsborne Souls-like games could really give you an NPC that can fight alongside you. Instead, to avoid these complications, I guess the other alternative is that, let's say in Elden Ring's case, you would not summon a Mimic tier, but you would now ring that same bell, and I guess you would just give yourself instead a massive stat boost. But as long as something doesn't actually get summoned, you are technically okay, but this just muddles the water further. I think we can all agree on that one. But then what this does say, for example, let's also look at Shin Megami Tensei. That's a game all about capturing monsters and summoning demons, which, by the way, is a series that existed before Pokemon and directly inspired Nintendo to create Pokemon in the first place due to Shin Megami Tensei's monster capturing mechanic. This is a massive overstep on Nintendo's part. Eventually, someone will somehow patent the concept of shooting a gun in a game, or who knows, maybe Nintendo can even patent owning the right to saving your game progress while they're at it too. And then you have YouTuber Carnage who weighed in on this, and here's what he said via Twitter. This is actually insane. All of game dev is iterative. The idea that Nintendo has somehow been some golden child company and only used mechanics they came up with and didn't iterate off others is insane. What a disgusting and corporate direction to take gaming. Shame on them. Exactly this. Nintendo should not be allowed to own game concepts like this because they did not not create it in the first place. And even if they did, they still shouldn't be allowed to own it because it is a game mechanic that can clearly be perceived and used in many different ways depending on the game. But this is how far Nintendo is willing to go to destroy Palworld, which tells me that they are indeed desperate as desperate can get in order to get Palworld gone at this point if they're doing stuff like this. But then there's also Windows Central's article, which is this titled, "The Patent Office Made a Huge Mistake, How Nintendo's Problematic Summoning Patent Passed Without Scrutiny." So Florian Mueller, who is the guy behind Games Free that broke this story on Nintendo's new patent and how damaging it can be to not only Palworld, but literally everything else, was recently interviewed. During that interview, he said this: "I think it should not have been granted. The Patent Office made a huge mistake, and when you look into it further, it's actually even worse than I explained before. It was then found in the patent that it further describes itself as this, which reads, Storage Medium Information Processing System, Information Processing Apparatus, and Game Processing Method could describe virtually anything from AI systems to self-driving car controllers or even word processors." So yes, Nintendo just kind of screwed over everybody pretty much with this. Florian Mueller also brings up in that same interview that games such as Final Fantasy, for example, would also be implicated by this too, since summoning is a key part of Final Fantasy's combat and the entire point of certain job classes, like say, I don't know, the Summoner, for obvious reasons. Again, this is only being done because Nintendo is desperate to win over Pocket Pair. Although Florian does make the point that he believes most development studios could fight this patent in court and win due to the nebulous nature around it. But according to Florian as well, that's not really the point, as he says here. Litigation is expensive. Even if you're right, even if you're confident that you would win, you still have to spend millions fighting the lawsuit. And for smaller developers, that's not an option. They'd rather settle or change their game design than face that risk. So this is a bleeding tactic that Nintendo is using, pretty much is what it is. They pretty much want to bleed other companies or studios out of their money to ensure that if they do use similar concepts to their games like Pokemon, that they will pay for it financially. Even if it's not to Nintendo, it's quite literally just a deterring tactic on their part. It's really scummy. Because of course, no indie game developer could survive this with Nintendo unless they had millions of dollars thanks to a massively successful game like, say, Palworld. But Pocket Pair is not really indie anymore anyways, but they're now like a bona fide development studio and publisher with multiple games under their belts. So how did something like this even get passed? Well, Florian would say this: "The examiner probably didn't fully consider the scope of prior art in video games and didn't fully grasp how common summoning mechanics already were." So Nintendo got what they wanted because the people who signed off on it don't really fully understand the scope of what Nintendo just did. Great. Love that. You even had IGN's article title, which is more scathing, which reads, "Nintendo should never have received controversial summon character and let it fight Pokemon patent, IP lawyers say." So the general consensus here is that nobody is really happy with Nintendo doing this, and it was also revealed in that IGN article that Nintendo has actually been pursuing this particular patent since 2023. So if it isn't obvious to you, Nintendo clearly wants to own every concept that they use in their games because it will only strengthen their ecosystem over others. If you can only play games that allow for monster capturing mechanics or switching between air or ground mounts and now summoning something to help you, that puts them at a massive advantage, but it will also dilute and stifle the kinds of games that can be made in the future. And personally, I think if the patent makes video games as an art form more limiting or worse, it should be pushed back against. But Nintendo clearly doesn't care either way because they have an excess in the billions when it comes to pocket change that they can use to bleed out pretty much anyone who then tries to fight back, although things get even more stupid and honestly confusing, as PC Gamer reports here. Nintendo reportedly gets even more obnoxious about patent law by taking a mods aren't real game stance against a Dark Souls 3 mod that could invalidate its Palworld lawsuit. That's a loaded title, so let me explain it to you because it is relevant. So during the Palworld versus Pokemon lawsuit that is still ongoing, obviously, Nintendo recently brought up that modders and by extension their mods do not count as proof against their ability to own their patents, because mods are not real games in Nintendo's opinion. So let's clarify that even further. Basically, there is a loophole to patents and such that is being brought up by places like Games Free, where that Florian Mueller guy I referenced earlier works at, and if a company issues a patent, it cannot technically be considered law if the art or concept of what they are trying to patent already existed in a mod. Hopefully that makes sense. Here's what PC Gamer said. As IP attorney Kirk Sigmund told PC Gamer last September, demonstrable prior art, meaning pre-existing work resembling reassembling the invention described in a patent's claims is bad news for patent holders, because it means they shouldn't have been granted the patent in the first place. Sigmon said that courts in Japan have a strong history of siding with patent lawsuit defendants who could present examples of prior art. But again, Nintendo is claiming just because a mod for a game may have similar mechanics to their patent, it does not invalidate their patent. The example that was given was Pocket Souls. It's a mod that was created for the game Dark Souls 3. Here's the mod on screen as it's available on Nexus Mods. Pocket Souls turns Dark Souls 3 into a Pokemon-like game. Mods like this and more are being presented by Pocket Pair in court against Nintendo right now, and the hope is that Pocket Pair is trying to show that Nintendo was given a patent on similar ideas that had already existed in video games. And therefore, if this is then proven true, which I mean it would, because Pocket Souls literally exists, it's right there, then it could make Nintendo's patent pointless and invalid, which would piss Nintendo off greatly. As the patents say, as you can see on screen here, I won't read it all for you, but I'll summarize it. Basically, if the concept of the patent had already existed prior to Nintendo trying to make that patent theirs, it invalidates is what this says. Which means by law, when Nintendo has been trying to push in order to ruin and destroy Palworld, it cannot legally be allowed to exist if it were to be used in a court of law against Palworld or really anyone else. That being said, Nintendo still got this patent to pass anyway, which still makes this patent now a real headache for places like Pocket Pair and especially Palworld. But hopefully these Japanese courts see reason that Nintendo is so obviously operating within bad faith here that they lose it. Because the best case scenario here is that Nintendo just loses this lawsuit completely. That is the preferred outcome, not just for Palworld, mind you, but really everybody. Because if Nintendo were to win this lawsuit, Palworld would just no longer exist, and that's real. I reported that like a month or two ago already. But in Nintendo's official demands, if they win the lawsuit, Palworld has to be scrubbed from the internet, games, all of it. It just can't exist then. They do want to erase Palworld completely, which would, yes, make Nintendo even more bullish and hellstrung to continue their onslaught of stupid on everyone who isn't them. And before someone says that's clickbait, nope, not at all. As seen here from NME.com, Nintendo back in 2024 already tried this as they wanted Palworld to be shut down during all of these legal proceedings. To further clarify, as seen here in that same article as it reads, they are currently seeking an injunction that will halt all sales of Palworld until the legal proceedings are over. So Nintendo genuinely already tried to stop Palworld from being sold during this battle, which is still ongoing. They actively tried to stop Pocket Pair from selling their cash cow so that they could strangle them for both more money and time to then, force them into compliance. So I don't want to hear Nintendo didn't try anything scummy when everything they've done so far is the definition of scummy. I also wanted to bring to light how Nintendo's other scummy practice of keycards, which is how Nintendo is selling people physical keycards that do not have the games on them, which is a whole other can of worms that is anti-consumer that is also being defended by people, as automaton.com reports here. Nintendo's game keycards and pricing are not about greed, ex-Capcom developer argues they are acting to protect the industry. The ex-Capcom dev in question here is Masakazu Sugimori, who said this via Twitter, adding one point to the current flow of conversation regarding the claim often heard overseas that seems to have some legitimacy. It's unfair that something you bought becomes unplayable when the service ends. As a player myself, I can understand this perspective, and I sometimes feel the same way, but well, do physical items outside of digital products last forever? Most of the time they don't, right? Physical things always have a lifespan and will eventually break. Digital products, on the other hand, generally don't have a lifespan, and then he continues, I feel that these moves are largely aimed at protecting the gaming industry and the digital entertainment industry. It might be a bit too optimistic of a view, but the fact is that because Nintendo takes the lead, other companies can more easily follow suit to protect themselves. I understand where Sugimori is coming from, but let's be real, Nintendo's keycards and really everything that they've been doing surrounding the Switch 2 has only shown that they are nothing but anti-consumer in the end. You don't own the games that you buy, you don't own the rights to playing them, you don't even own the console that you physically bought, since Nintendo can just brick the console whenever they want to and turn it into a paperweight, and they're overcharging per game over anyone else in the industry right now, and we're all supposed to just be okay with this simply because Nintendo makes Pokemon or Mario games? No, Nintendo is price gouging their consumers and they know it. They even recently announced Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 are coming to Switch 2. They are older Wii games. Surely Nintendo would price them accordingly, right? Except here's the price for both of them on their shop in Canada where I live, and it's $100 before taxes for ports of two older games. That is unreasonable. In some parts of Canada where the tax rate is well over 10%, you're paying through the nose for these ports on your Switch Switch 2. And then adding insult to injury that many Switch 2 games are keycards, meaning that there's no game on the physical card that you just bought, is just further proof that Nintendo is not protecting the industry, nor are they protecting consumer rights. They are only protecting their rights to owning everything that you buy from them that they can at any point in time remove from your possession in a moment's notice. And when you factor in what I presented today about Palworld and Pocket Pair and how they now own the rights to summoning help and more, this just tells me that if you believe Nintendo is in their, right to cater to consumer rights or privileges, you're honestly being gullible. And you'd likely also buy a can of air from Nintendo for $30 if they told you that the air was from like the Mushroom Kingdom too. Look, Nintendo can still fix all these problems and more, but frankly, at this point, I just don't think they're interested. And that to me shows that Nintendo truly is trying to erase their competition and overstep their boundaries to ensure that they can only make what they make and no one else. But what do you think? Is Nintendo justified in this? Are their patents okay, or do you have problems with them? What about how they tried to erase Palworld already, and what about keycards and that Mario Galaxy pricing? Is that too much, or is $50 Canadian per game a worthy price in your eyes? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And just another thank you to Fume for sponsoring this video. Remember to use code Endymion or visit the link in the description. Thank you. As always, thank you for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.